brought to a standstill on Saturday as tens of thousands of people lined the streets for the funeral of the Iranian general Qasemsolemai and the other people killed by a US drone strike on Friday. Mourners carrying flags of militia groups chanted "America is the enemy of God" as they received the funeral cortege in the Qadimiyah district. The body of General Soleimani is to be returned to Iran for further funeral ceremonies. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has visited the general's family in Iran to pay his respects. The authorities have promised to make America pay. The US is deploying an additional 3,000 troops to the Middle East. David Willis reports.
American officials say the airstrike that killed Qasemsolemai was carried out in self-defense. They say the man who's been blamed for the deaths of hundreds of Americans in the Middle East over the years was plotting a major attack on US diplomats and military personnel. At a rally last night in Florida, President Trump said that threat had now been lifted.
Qasemsolemai has been killed and his bloody rampage is now forever gone. He was plotting attacks against Americans, but now we've ensured that his atrocities have been stopped for good. They are stopped for good.
Iran has vowed revenge, and amid heightened tensions, the US is sending reinforcements to the region, 3,750 troops so far, and warning its citizens stationed in Iraq to get out as soon as they can. Qasemsolemai was one of America's deadliest enemies, but the US has yet to release intelligence information supporting its claim that he was planning a major attack. Administration officials insist, however, that hundreds of Americans could have died.
They were aiming to take down significant amounts of Americans that would have undoubtedly killed locals too, Iraqis, Lebanese, Syrians perhaps, people all throughout the region. This was an attack that would have been at some scale. We can't talk much about the details, but suffice it to say the American people can know that the decision that President Trump made to take Qasemsolemai down saved American lives.
Neither the US nor Iran favors outright war, but the Trump administration's claim that taking out one of Iran's most powerful officials will prevent further bloodshed may soon be put to the test. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Concerns about the security situation in the region have prompted this response from the British government. In a statement released a short while ago, it changed its travel advice to British nationals, advising against all travel to Iraq outside of the Kurdistan region. And it also upgraded its advice on travelling to Iran, saying only essential journeys should be made. Well, joining us to tell us more is Yaroslav Trofimov, the chief foreign affairs correspondent of the Wall Street Journal. He joins us now live from Dubai. Yaroslav, thanks so much. I'd like to look at Iran and its capabilities. What's your assessment of Iran's actual military capabilities?
Well, Iran is certainly in no position to have a major conventional conflict with the United States. The Iranian Navy is obsolete. The Iranian Air Force is basically no match for any of the Air Forces of its neighbors, not even the Saudis, let alone the US Air Force. So Iran would want to retaliate, as it promised to retaliate, would try to do it asymmetrically, through cyber warfare, through using its proxies, such as the Shiite militias that Qasemsolemai had nurtured around the region, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria, and in Yemen.
Let's look at Iraq as well. The Iraqi parliament is to debate the presence of US forces. Do you think it would really move to get rid of US forces, or would it want to keep some US forces as a protection against Iranian influence?
Well, there is a debate also within Iran itself, because not everybody in Iran wants the American forces to leave, because it's very convenient for the Iranians to have them as easy targets for retribution and as sort of a tripwire that would prevent an actual American attack on Iran. So as far as the popular mood is concerned now, it's very hard for anyone to publicly side with the US now. Even those Iraqi politicians that have been very vociferous about the need to roll back Iranian influence have sort of calmed down and have paid their respects and to Qasemsoleimani's family and expressed their condolences. So the political mood definitely is now on the side of those who want to get rid of the US in Iraq.
One analyst put it, it could well turn out that the killing of General Soleimani, intended as a shot against Iran, could accelerate one of Iran's long-term objectives, pushing the United States military out of Iraq. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, that is quite possible. And obviously, if the U.S. forces leave Iraq, it's quite likely they'll also have to leave Syria because the U.S. contingent there is highly dependent on logistics and supplies through Iraqi territory.
President Trump, he said in the past he wants to end or scale down US involvement in foreign wars, including in the Middle East. But it also appears he wants to end Iranian influence in the Middle East. Can you do both at the same time, or are those two aims completely contradictory?
Well, it's quite hard. It's quite hard because obviously if the U.S. is in the Middle East to deter Iranian influence, it has to project force. And for that, you need the military resources. So if you look at the history of U.S. involvement in the Middle East over the last decade, every administration wants to reduce the footprint, wants to move back, and gets pulled in. Remember, President Obama withdrew from Iraq just to have to come back once the Islamic State threatened to overrun Baghdad.
Yaroslav Trofimov from the Wall Street Journal, thank you so much. Live now to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who joins us from Kabul. Lise, I'd like to talk to you about Iran, because that's a country you've been to many, many times. The Islamic Republic was founded in 1979. How big a moment is the killing of Qasem Soleimani in that country's 4-decade-long modern history?
Oh, some are seeing this as the most decisive event for many decades, almost possibly since the Islamic Iranian Revolution in 1979. As you mentioned, Iran, of course, has had a very turbulent history, and it has always been a history of tensions with the United States. And now they have reached this watershed moment with Iran basically saying that the killing of Qasem Soleimani is tantamount to a declaration of war. It has just cemented the view of hardline conservatives, including the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, that the United States is not a country to be trusted and that it is an enemy of Iran. And I think we're going to hear that again and again as these elaborate funeral processions stretching over several days begin today in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, and then go to Iran tomorrow to continue for the next few days. There will be angry calls in the streets, more calls for revenge by senior Iranian officials. This is really a monumental moment in the history of Iran, and all Iranians know it.
I'd like to look at another issue, the nuclear program. In 2015, Iran signed a deal with world powers to curb its nuclear ambitions. The US pulled out of it. Other world powers are still in it. But given the current circumstances, how difficult will it be for them to salvage this deal?
Many things died when Qasem Soleimani was killed, along with a senior leader of a pro-Iranian Iraqi militia. One of the other things which died was the diplomatic efforts to try to keep this landmark nuclear deal on track. Many observers believe that it is as hard as it was before. It is exceedingly difficult now for Europe to make more efforts to try to keep this now very, very fragile deal, a deal that was already hanging by a thread. And in the next day or so, Iran had been set to take another carefully calibrated move out of its commitments in this nuclear deal. It's been doing this every few months to try to send a strong message to the United States that it should come back to the negotiating table, that it should meet Iran's principal demand, that the United States should ease the crippling sanctions in order for them, as President Trump always said, wants to get back and negotiate a new deal. Now it seems this is the whole new chapter, and people will be watching closely to see how far this time Iran pulls out of those commitments not to enrich not to enrich uranium to a level that could put it on the path to producing some kind of weapon. The nuclear deal, of course, was meant to allow Iran to continue with its peaceful nuclear program, it says, but not to acquire a nuclear weapon. So this is yet another issue that has acquired growing urgency on the agenda between Iran, the United States, and the rest of the international community.
Lise Doucette in Kabul, thank you so much.